Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I fidgeted around with the video quality today, so let me know if anything's out of the ordinary, no good, if it's working or not. I'm not sure what the results of my fidgeting were, but I increased the quality, so that's why I'm a little suspect. But that's okay. Bitcoin Deb says, good morning. NPCs too busy blocking bridges. We're going to lead up. We're going to talk about the bridges today, but we're going to lead up to it. All right. So the bridge is definitely on our agenda for today to talk about. It's a great reason to break up with fiat. But we love the bridge blockers. They're our favorite people now. They're so good. They're so good. Video quality is better than before, UTXO telling me. Sean recommends. Good morning. Great to be able to join live again. We love having the live people. All right. This is an interactive show with B. Indeed. Live long and prosper. Thank you, Defina. Beaumatin. Good morning, Bitcoiners. B for victory. Christine in the house. Good morning. Good morning, Christine. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Hammersaw. Hope you're doing well. Still in Barbara. Yeah, tomorrow's the last day. So today it's a hot one too. I'm looking forward to leaving. But yeah, tomorrow is the final day. That was our original plan. Again, the reason we do it this way is that it's the Easter break for the children, and there's a lot of activities and stuff. So this is normally when we do it. Dr. Satoshi in the house. Good morning, Dr. Satoshi. I hope you're doing well. Let me just see what the folks over on Rumble are saying. What are the Rumble folks saying? Make sure my feed is going through there. Comments. Oh, no, that was yesterday's. Oh, am I not live yet? The Real Drone War. Okay, hold on. It's saying here that Rumble. Oh, no, it's working. It's working. Wasn't coming up. Zim KD, good morning. Tap that like button. We love it. Drew Hadley, hola. T minus 3 days, 11 hours. Of course, referring to the having great day freedom seekers from Moran. Connector, bonjour, y'all. Bonjour, Connector. Sluggo, 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, Sluggo. Hope you're doing well. Blaine. Good morning, everyone. Indeed. Hoddle T in the house. Glenn, good morning. Satoshi Nakamoto invented ivermectin. We love it. Why not? Let's just acknowledge. P-Man, one more time. Moscow time, coffee and exercise to the start of a great day. We love it. We're going to start clipping Moscow time. We're going to start turning it into a short little clip. So we're getting there, right? We're going to be putting more time into some of this stuff. All right. Let's just acknowledge we got a major sunrise on our hands. We're doing great with the sun. All right, sun, operational. And Bitcoin's running. We're doing great, guys. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Do we need to leave X for Nostr? I don't think so. X is where all the activity and fighting is, right? The Nostr fighting is kind of low energy, right? It's kind of like the inside baseball Bitcoiners fighting amongst each other. I don't know. I wouldn't get, again, the most entertaining thing for us is to watch NPC sludge people be NPC sludge people. Like, it's like with the bridges. We're going to talk about it later. But the idea that the liberals are blocking bridges in their own cities, right? They're not blocking bridges in like the countryside. It's not like Stagecoach Road through the countryside is getting blocked. I used to make a joke when the Occupy movement was started, saying I was going to occupy all these country roads, just as a joke. The charging. Yeah, again, Elon still doesn't really. I mean, if he dives into Bitcoin a little more, then he'll understand that the DDoS situation with the free accounts and the spamming of the network with bots has a solution. But if he wants to charge new subscribers, I mean, no, it's real. It's real, Bitcoin for all. He said it himself. He said he's going to charge them a small fee because he can't beat the bot army. So it's real. I don't think there's any denying it. Anyway, you got to just encourage bridges in liberal cities being blocked. It's kind of great, right? Rumble. In case you don't know, Rumble Bitcoin Magazine dead. So Rumble's on, but you got to go subscribe to Count BTC on Rumble. So there is a Rumble feed. We're just not running it through the Bitcoin Magazine channel anymore. Yeah, no. But again, so, going back to the Twitter thing, I'm in it for the fight. I want to be able to see the sludge people, right? It's important to me to see the sludge people as they disintegrate psychologically. So if I don't get access to the best humor going, right? We're going to talk about the best humor going in a second in Moscow time. If we don't get access to that, what are we going to do, right? I don't want to see a bunch of Bitcoiners arguing about scaling again, scaling, jeez. Ordinals, all this shit, right? I don't care. I really don't care. Filters, I just don't care. Like I'm not against people who want to argue it. I just don't care. Like I don't feel compelled to worry about what's going on with the Bitcoin blockchain. It's going to be fine. Bitcoin is going to be fine. It's like worrying about solar flares. Like I don't care. Like what am I supposed to worry about, the sun? No, I don't. I'm just not worried about the sun. It's fine. Right? The sun is doing great. Bitcoin is doing great. People can argue about shit. That's fine with me. I just don't need to be involved in it. I don't need to look at it. I don't need to hear it. It's boring. It's super boring. Right? I'm here for a disintegration of the psychological state of NPC fiat people. That's what I'm here for. Right? We think it's funny. X is the best. Yeah, exactly. P-Man says X is the best Moscow time source. Where am I going to get Moscow time on Nostr? I can't find. I mean, these guys aren't sitting there saying like, I got to eat bugs in order to, I don't know, whatever reason they have to eat bugs, save the world from burning from carbon dioxide, right? You're not supposed to worry about the sun, just the weather, which scientists have shown has nothing to do with the sun. Nothing. The sun is unrelated to our current circumstances on Earth. It's irrelevant. All right, let's get into some Moscow time before I give away too many of the stories we're talking about today. There's some good ones. There's some great ones. All right, this one's great. You gotta pay close attention here, right? This is the farmer outrage in Europe. This is what they're talking about, right? So Washington Post says farmer outrage is powering a backlash against the centrist status quo. So the centrist status quo is to poison everyone with the food. Don't forget, that's the centrist status quo. That's what everyone agreed on, right? We love it. Let's feed everyone poison, status quo, right? So farmer outrage is powering a backlash against the centrist status quo, and far-right parties have skillfully seized the moment ahead of key elections. That's the old pounce. They've pounced, right? They're pouncing on the sick food we have. These ones are great. So, that stabbing you had in Sydney, Australia, right? So there was a priest up there, an Orthodox priest. He was given a thing on Sunday. Someone walked up, bang, 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 right? And what did people have to say about the victim? Let's see what people had to say about the victim. The New York Times describes the victim, Bishop Emmanuel, as part of an ultra-conservative sect of the Assyrian Orthodox Church. He is known to live stream his sermons online. During the pandemic, he opposed lockdowns and preached against COVID vaccinations. He has also often condemned LGBTQ people. So, of course, it's okay for him to get stabbed, right? He deserves it. There's more. Daily Mail says, who is Bishop Mari Emmanuel, priest at Wakely's Christ the Good Shepherd Church, attacked in second Sydney stabbing, is a known anti-vaxxer? Fucking get him. Get him. Get that anti-vaxxer. This one's great. All right. This one's great. That pastor, right? Some people would call him a Christian. That's one way to describe him, an Orthodox Christian, they said, right? That's a good one. But CNN has a new name here, right? This is CNN breaking news. I missed this one. This was from back in Easter. 45 people killed as a bus carrying Easter worshipers falls off a cliff in South Africa. Easter worshipers, everyone. Who are they? You ever met an Easter worshiper? They're my favorite. Easter worshipers. Are you an Easter worshiper? Go worship some Easter. I don't know. Sometimes I decide to only be a Christmas worshiper. If I'm in the mood, I just want to do Christmas worshiping because I like to worship Christmas. But sometimes, different years, different ages, different times in my life, I'm an Easter worshiper. It's the best. It's the best. All right. Washington Post has a bunch of Trump derangement syndrome here. So we've got them. This is what they've got first of all, right? The NPCs are getting out of control with this inflation. They're sprouting up everywhere. We got more. Where are the were there any birthing persons? Yeah, the birthing persons who were also Easter worshippers died in the emissions event. And instead of a car crash, we're just going to call them emissions events. You know, the Easter worshippers and the birthing persons died in the emissions event. We love it. All right. The Washington Post says, Genocide Joe is a phrase deployed by progressive voters who have criticized Biden for continuing to send weapons to Israel, as its military campaign in Gaza has killed over 33,000 Palestinians. Trump ralliers shouted the pro-Palestinian chant. They're shouting it. This one's from Aaron Blake in the Washington Post. Trump said Iran's launch of... I can't even understand this one. I just want to read it because it's awesome, right? Trump said Iran's launch of drones and missiles towards Israel would not have happened if he were in office. Here's the best part. The provocation of Iran's strikes is notable. 99% of the projectiles were intercepted and there were no casualties. So it's no big deal. So all Trump was saying here is that if he was still president, a no big deal thing wouldn't have happened. So good. So good. We got this one. The Washington Post again. The motions before jury selection began showed that prosecutors plan to lay out a story related to the tabloid fodder that fueled Trump's fame and revisits the Access Hollywood scandal that was a low point during the final weeks of the 2016 election. We got more. Opinion by Eugene Robinson. These are my favorite ones. This is that genre that I said we were going to see more of, right? Which is the system is working because Trump's on trial. The system, it proves we have a democracy and the rule of law because even Trump is getting prosecuted. Even Trump. I love the flip side of that one. You're going to see more of these. Is that the flip side of it is when, you know, because all of these things are going to sort of fall apart, right? They're going to fall apart, and then they're going to say, "Oh, it's like the OJ thing. It's because he's rich." It's because he's rich. The system doesn't affect rich people. Rich people have an advantage. They're going to see more of those. This is the old variety. This is the system does work. You're going to see the system doesn't work because of rich people soon. That's the next cope, right? But for now, they're just sticking with the old fashioned. The system works because he's on trial. So here we go. The first criminal trial of a former U.S. president got underway Monday with Donald Trump sitting in the defense table in a New York courtroom and proving that somehow, eventually, our justice system does work. It does work, everyone. Yay! It works. It's so good. This is great, too. This is again with Alvin Bragg. Steps taken by the former president in the run-up to the razor-close 2016 election may have changed the course of history. Because he stole the election, of course. That's when you read the article, you'll find out. Now, remember I said when you want to see the NPCs reacting and all that stuff? Yesterday was a great day for the NPCs. Normally, when Trump has the good news days and you go on to MSNBC, they're all depressed and they're all like, I don't know. He's Trump. So normally we've had a lot of that, right? It's been a lot of that lately. Trump's been winning, and then all these people have been having their mental breakdowns. So, but it's kind of been monochromatic. It's kind of been on one tone, just like ding, 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 ding. I was in the mood for a little refrain, a little change in vibe. And yesterday, everyone on MSNBC was happy. You should see the pictures of everyone. Normally, these people are dour, but yesterday, it's like smiles all around. I got a whole bunch of their smiles, right? These ladies, normally these are batshit crazy bitches, totally angry with their resting bitch face, but no resting bitch face yesterday. When you watched, they were delighted. They were just enthralled yesterday on the fake news, right? Just having the best time of their life. And so there's a bunch of headlines. They're all excited, right? So remember our favorite podcast, Prosecuting Donald Trump? It's been nominated for a Webby. It's going to get an award. It's so good, right? Here's another one, MSNBC. This is a headline. Trump's trial, a freak show on the outside and solemn on the inside. That one with all the chicks laughing and smiling. The headline there is, the former president is finally, at long last, sitting before a judge hearing one of his criminal trials. At long last. Finally, he's in front of a court. It's been a week. It's been a whole week. He's finally in court. He's finally in court. I get it. It's criminal. Now, those ladies, these two resting bitch face ladies, they're investigative whores. Everyone's so happy yesterday. Just so happy about everything. We love it. We love that they need a break, right? It's a lot. The psychic load of losing every day is tough. And I don't want my NPC sources to just kill themselves and die. I need them out there, right? It's like Anakin. I need him, right? In Star Wars before he kills Mace Windu or whatever in that scene, right? Don't kill Palpatine. You can't kill the NPC sludge people. I'd be we would not have Moscow time. It would be a big problem, right? So we need to make sure they get a few days where they're a little excited. They think things are going well, and there you go, right? So these ladies, this is what they had to say. This is the New York Times investigative reporter. So she comes on MSNBC, and again, right, she's got the crazy eyes. She's sitting there all the time going on about this stuff. This is what she said yesterday, that Trump looked like he was nodding off. That was their big quote, right? Trump fell asleep. So good. All right. Now let's go to Canada for a bit, right? We'll get into our theme of federalism. We're going to be talking about federalism today. But here's what we got from CBC News. This one's good. Okay. Paul Kershaw, a BC, British Columbia-based affordability advocate, says high house prices are partly due to the assumption that homes are our greatest financial asset. So the problem here, right, and this is a state broadcaster entirely funded by the government. They make no money, have never made money. Their entire budget comes from the federal government. So they get a guy on who is actually saying, right, that the problem right now with the housing market in Canada is because you assume that houses are important. You're an idiot. You're so stupid, right? You're so dumb. On the flip side, the Washington Post has another headline very similar. They say owning a house is how many Americans accumulate wealth, but affording one is a growing challenge. Should you buy a home right now? Take this quiz, right? So you get one fake news newspaper saying here, this is a normal American way to accumulate wealth. But in Canada, they're trying to tell you that, you kind of made a mistake assuming that was a way to build your wealth. Yeah, you're a bit of an idiot, right? You're a bit of an idiot. Jose says, yeah, you need a house. Yeah, you're a bit of a loser. You're a bit of an asshole. I don't know if you need a house, right? So that's what they're doing. Now, here's the thing about federalism and just the way to frame it right now, right? It's becoming more and more obvious that the federal government itself in Canada and the United States is the main problem. Now, Canadian federalism and American federalism are almost the exact same calibration. Only banking is different in Canada. Banking is a federal responsibility, not a state responsibility. So that's one. Canada is already a shithole communist dump. And here's proof, right? So I'm going to give you something right now. We're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to laugh. Okay. We're going to see if we can actually laugh at this stuff. I challenge you to laugh, not at them with their jokes. I'm going to challenge you to laugh. Now, this stuff comes from CBC that I just mentioned. So the CBC that just had this guy on there saying, you made a really dumb error assuming houses were a great financial asset, right? You made a dumb error assuming they were a financial asset. And he's right. He's actually right. But not in the way he's framed it. But here's the thing, right? That's on CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So they have also had, it's not just news they do, right? They do shows. They try to model themselves after a US network or the BBC, where they actually produce shows. And they've produced a so-called comedy show, right? The federal government has produced a comedy show in Canada that's been on the air since before I can remember. It was already lame and stupid in the 90s, and we already laughed at people who watched it in the 90s when I grew up there. I think it's from the 70s actually, but I don't really know the history of this stupid show. It's called This Hour Has 22 Minutes, right? This Hour Has 22 Minutes. You don't need to know the name. Please don't even bother looking it up. It's the dumbest show you've ever seen in your life. They've never made a funny joke in their entire existence. Only NPCs in Canada in the 90s watched it, and very few of them. So you had to be in the lowest rung of Canadian NPC in the 90s, which are some of the stupidest people to have ever lived on planet Earth, right? So that's the only audience they've ever had. Now their audience is down to zero. And the show still goes on because it's funded by the federal government. There's no feedback loop. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people don't watch it. None of that matters, right? So this is what they've actually come down to publishing. They have a Twitter feed, and I'm going to read you some of their Twitter jokes, right? We're going to see if we can laugh. We're going to see if it's even possible. Now, you're allowed to laugh at them, right? So this is a quasi Moscow time section. But this is the same people that were telling you were stupid for assuming a house was a great financial asset, which they were right about. But here's them trying to make jokes. This is an actual supposed comedy network in Canada funded by NPC sludge people, watched by nobody, and only exists because of Canadian federalism. It would not exist otherwise, right? There's no natural reason for this thing to exist. It can only exist because of fiat, because of the lack of feedback loop in money, because Canadians can get taxed by their federal government and just have no say in the matter, right? So this is what sludge people are told. If the fiat people win, it's going to be sludge people listening to jokes like this until the end of time, right? Until the end of time. This is what we got. Ready? I dare you to laugh at this stuff. Try your best, right? All right, ready? And it's always the same formula because I think AI just writes it now, right? So here we go, right? I'm going to try. We're going to try. Now, it's not my fault that it's not funny, obviously, right? So I'm going to do my best to put the punchline delivered accurately, but none of this stuff is good. Ready? The RCMP is warning people of Interact. So Interact is the ATM, is like sending money by ATM or email, or it's the Plus network, or so for Americans who don't know it, it's what allows the cards to all work. It's the card network, right? So it's the card network. The RCMP is warning people of Interact e-transfer scams. Okay, just don't warn our moms. We need her to send us $40. Bill Maher roasted Canada this week, saying it's a cautionary tale of what America could be. Maybe, but we've got at least one thing going for us. We don't have Bill Maher. It's been a year since the $20 million heist at Pearson Airport, and still no sign of the money. On the bright side, they are offering a meal voucher. Wildlife professionals say a growing number of wild animals are making their homes in cities across Canada. Hey, can you show US how to do that? No. Sorry, let me start that one over. I don't even know how to read some of these jokes. Wildlife professionals say a growing number of wild animals are making their homes. There's the joke. It's making their homes. Wildlife professionals say a growing number of wild animals are making their homes in cities across Canada. Hey, can you show us how to do that? Ask Canadians. So they're trying to laugh at the housing crisis here. It's hilarious. It's so funny. I love it. I love seeing all these fucking people on the streets in Canada. It's the best. It's the fucking best. Right? Here's another one. Margot Robbie's production company is developing a movie based on the game Monopoly. And you know Ryan Gosling already growing a big bushy white mustache. This one's good. An Alberta man has been harassed with hundreds of dollars worth of pizza. Look, nobody should be harassed. But if you're going to be ... It goes on. You can do this for days. They've been running this shit for 30 fucking years, more maybe. I don't know how long it's been on. Here's what we got. Ontario. No, that's not even funny. Well, anyway, you get the point. I mean, I could keep reading this, but these are too stupid, right? Let's see. This one's on economists. Economists say the loonie could fall to half the value of the American dollar. Finally, the toonie's big moment has come. So here the joke is that the toonie is the $2 coin, and the loonie is the $1 coin. It's hilarious that the $2 is going to be worth $1 US. It's hilarious. It's the funniest thing. I think it's funny. I do. I actually think it's funny, but not in the way they said it, not in the way they wrote it. Right? Canadian humor is supposed to be fart jokes. Well, no, I mean, hold on. Canadians are pretty funny. I mean, we've produced our disproportionate amount of comedians, right? Mike Myers, and Jim Carrey, and the funniest man to ever live, Norm Macdonald, right? So Canadians do actually have a sense of humor. Michael J. Fox was Canadian, right? We got a lot of these guys, but not the ones that they put on there. Rick Moranis, when you need him. Where's Rick Moranis when you need him? Yeah, John Candy. We had a lot of comedians. We still have a lot of comedians. They target Alberta because it's funny to make fun of the breadwinner. Yeah. So anyway, but here's the thing, guys. And here's here's one of the reframes, right? So that movie Civil War that came out, right? The movie Civil War. People talking about that's the one where they say, what kind of American are you, right? And people have watched it now. It's pretty weak. Everyone says it's not going to have the persuasive power that some people worried about. But there's a scene in it where they go to get gas. The reason why people hate the Civil War movie is because it follows main legacy media journalists as if they're heroes, right? So they're going to interview the president. I haven't seen it. But there's a scene where the truck pulls up at a gas station and they say they want to buy a tank of gas and a couple of jerry cans of gas. And they say, we got $300. And the guy starts laughing, right? He's got a gun and he starts, $300 will buy you a sandwich. We got ham and we got cheese. And they say 300 Canadian. And the guy says, okay, right? So he goes, we got 300 Canadian. And the guy says, okay, now the reason why this is retarded and stupid is because Canada is not going to make it through anything, right? Canada is already done. And when I say already done, I mean that the type of federalism that Canada practices, as I said in the beginning, Canadian federalism is calibrated almost identical to American federalism in that the states are supposed to be very powerful and the federal government wasn't supposed to be quite as strong as it became. The states remain quite powerful in Canada, right? But the federal government still has sway in all kinds of things like the CBC, like this, absolutely not funny, this hour has 22 minutes show, and like their fake news and like all of this stuff, right? The CBC is worse than NPR, by the way. If you saw that NPR lady that everyone's freaking out about, that's everybody at the CBC. There's not even a single white conservative male anywhere near that business, right? It's just not happening. It's just mental illness people. And it's been that way for a long time, right? It's been mentally ill people for years and that have been running it and just doing everything, right? So this idea here in this movie that shows that Canada somehow makes it and the Canadian dollar is still worthwhile, I think is one of the things they get wrong because they didn't even try to get close to reality here, right? The idea that somehow America would disintegrate before Canada is insane, right? Canada's not a real place. Canada exists because there's a huge football stadium and we can sell hot dogs outside of it. I mean, if it wasn't for selling hot dogs outside of a football stadium, I mean it metaphorically, obviously, we're this tiny little thing that specializes in a couple raw material resources. Otherwise, we have nothing. And if America wasn't absolutely fused to us with a 5,000 mile long border, we wouldn't even exist. There would be no reason for it. It would be too shitty and too cold, and it just wouldn't exist, right? So furthermore, the bonds that tie Canada are way weaker than those of America. So I think what we're going to see in this current election cycle right now in Canada, we don't know when there'll be elections. We might not have elections for a little while because of the way the system works there. But the idea that Canada is going to survive this is no longer even plausible, right? There's no boomer coming. Pierre Poilievre, God bless the guy. I've known him for years. I met Pierre when he was first elected as a congressman. I've been to dinner with him many times. I've been at tables with him many times. I've drank tons of scotch with him. I've hung out with him a bunch for years, right? I ran, I don't know if you guys know this, I ran for Canadian Parliament. So I ran to be a congressman in the 2011 election in my hometown, in my home county, which is the county that borders Vermont on the Quebec side. And my county is basically the straight line between Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog, if you know the area. And then it's a sort of a rectangle on there, right? So I ran in the 2011 election for the Conservatives, and Pierre Poilievre gave me a huge donation for my, different counties can share their money a bit. So he had way more than you're allowed to spend. So he was just handing it out to candidates who didn't have a lot of money. I had enough money, but you can still spend up to the limit. So instead of having to fundraise, he just gave me a bunch of the money. I paid him back, right? The campaign paid him back, but that's often how people do things there. So have to ask, is Champ real? Maybe, yeah, it's a sturgeon. CB, it's a sturgeon if it is real. Sturgeons can get huge there. So you can, and the back is very arched and with the fins, right? Yeah, Loch Ness. We got Messi in Memphrey, in Memphremagog, right? It's fun to watch, but fake as hell. No matter who you choose, you will get screwed. Yeah. So it's probably a sturgeon. Yeah, they can come from. They're all over the St. Lawrence River. So theoretically, it would have been easy to get down the Richelieu River, which is the Lake Champlain empties into the St. Lawrence, even though the Hudson sort of comes out the bottom of it, and but it's a separate water system. That's the Catskills bringing their water down to New York City. But you can actually sail or boat from Lake Champlain down to New York City, but the locks and everything that form the barrier of the watershed between southern Lake Champlain and New York City is a little sketchy, right? It's not as easy as it was when locks and canals were more popular in America. So I think they came down there, and I go to the Science Museum in Burlington with my kids all the time. We're members there, and it's right on the water, and they've got a big sturgeon in an aquarium there, and it's pretty. And they have a whole presentation on Champy, and they just say Champy, Champy, Champy. They don't make the connection, but I think most people believe it's a sturgeon, right? So anyway, go back to the federalism thing in Canada. In Canada, what's going to happen, I predict, is that Quebec and Alberta, the two bad boys of Canadian federalism, are not going to keep the deal going with the federal government. They're going to renegotiate. So whenever you hear about sovereignty movements in Canada, whenever you hear about the desire of Quebec to separate, it's not exactly that. That's propaganda. What it usually is to renegotiate the constitutional division of powers. That's what both referendum questions asked. Quebec's had two referendums so far, 1980 and 1995. And both referendums were more or less, are you in favor of Quebec renegotiating its place in Canada and its deal in the Constitution, yes or no? So that will probably be the question again, right? So it's not a pure separation. It's always been a renegotiation with increased sovereignty for the provinces, increased responsibilities, and a diminished federal responsibility. So I think you're going to get that this year in Canada, but that's not the important part, right? The important part is America's also going to renegotiate its federal organization. I don't know if it needs to go to the Constitution, but we're seeing it almost all over the place. Now, yesterday, Vivek got activated, it looks like, right? So he did a video, he gave some quotes, he touched on a bunch of different policy things. I think the announcement of him as VP, maybe not tomorrow or next week, but is starting to be pre-swayed. It looks like they're starting to seed him in different policy areas that he's going to be effective in during the election. So he went on about election integrity yesterday, which he's great at, right? But one of the neat things he was talking about with the Trump case is, sorry, not with the Trump case, but with the deep state, and deep state being the perversion of federalism, being the cancer that grew out of federalism in Washington, D.C. as USA Inc., as the federal corporate entity that runs all of these powers and responsibilities. The same thing that happened in Canada, the same thing that's funded by the collateralized birth certificates that allow them to take out money in your name in order to fund their no feedback loop, which goes into paying for the terrible comedy that I just read to you. So here's Vivek talking about one that I didn't know about. So I knew a little bit about this case, but if you just read my recent book, The Bitcoiner's Guide to the U.S. 2024 Elections, you'll notice that I talk about the renegotiation of the federal government. I call it End the Fed, understanding that we're talking with End the Fed. We're talking about the Federal Reserve. That's not really what I'm talking about in the book. It's the federal government, but it sounds better. So I mentioned in that case, the Chevron case, which is a big case involving federal jurisdiction, federal authority. I've talked often about the Jarkissi versus SEC, which is this case where we might actually have the SEC and its enforcement branch deemed unconstitutional, and the ramifications would be almost any federal executive branch enforcement court or quasi-judicial system would be deemed unconstitutional. The logic here being the separation of powers have put the judiciary inside the executive for a few special issues like securities law. In this case, the securities law can still be written by the SEC. They can still pass the rules, pass the laws, but they can't enforce their own rules. And so there was a fellow who fought that. It's at the Supreme Court now. The implications would be for any federal executive branch organization, their ability to have an inside quasi-judicial court for enforcement would be taken away, so that civil courts would be the ones responsible for applying the normal rules that the SEC applies. The logic being that the reason why securities law has become so out of control, opaque, difficult to follow, difficult to understand, seemingly arbitrary, and this was the argument that Jarkissi made in the case, was that because you fused the enforcement with the regulatory branch so closely, you've made a situation where lay judges can't even understand. Like a judge, not a person, a judge can't even understand the laws. So that's a sign that you've gone too far, right? But here's one that Vivek was talking about that I hadn't seen before, or I had seen but hadn't really computed and put it into my predictions about where federalism is heading. And he says here, we can't just complain about the deep state. We have to dismantle it. Here's how. West Virginia versus EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency, the West Virginia sued them, right? Gives the president the power to gut the regulatory state. The Supreme Court held that if a federal regulation has a major economic or policy impact, it must be passed by Congress, not a three-letter agency like EPA, FDA, SEC, etc. Everyday Americans can now push back in court and hold these agencies accountable, and the next president can rescind their unconstitutional regulations. So this is the motosierra. This is the chainsaw moment. If you combine Jharkhasi and Chevron with this, it looks like whoever is coming into power at the federal level next year has the powers needed to destroy the federal government. Now, these powers might have existed for a long time, but the reason to do it wasn't really there. But now that we're starting to see just how dangerous the federal government has come for Americans. Now, remember, what I think we're seeing here in America is everything the US federal government did abroad, everything that the CIA did abroad, everything, rigging elections. It looks like America has became a specialist in rigging elections since the 48 election in Italy. It looks like we let the fox in the henhouse in 1948, and it's come back to America. What happened was the communists were going to win in 48, and America intervened using the mafia in order to strong arm people so that the capitalists, or I don't even want to use capitalists and communists, that's a fake binary, so that the US aligned forces wouldn't be in power so that the US aligned forces would win the election in 48, because they would have lost. Apparently there was no way they were going to win unless they cheated. So they cheated. Right? It was probably a good thing. I mean, we hate communism more than anything, right? Now, it looks like that all got spun around, and what we have now is what America did. I think it's been like 80 elections that we know the US government has rigged around the world since that era. It looks like we became specialists. 80, that's more than one a year, right? That's more than one a year. So it looks like we did this more than one a year, more than one election a year we rigged. And now we've done it to ourselves, right? So it looks like the threat that Americans need to perceive as real is from our own federal government. That wasn't even really possible to say out loud just 4 years ago. If you'd have said that 4 years ago out loud, people would have been like, well, America's still a force for good. Net, America's a force for good, right? Now that might still be true. I'm not necessarily arguing with that, but you couldn't say that the biggest danger was the US federal government. Now you can. Now you can say it without really triggering anyone or creating some sidetrack argument, right? So now when you see Vivek get activated like this, he's talking about reducing the federal government. I think he can actually do it, right? I think he's actually capable of doing this in the same way that Millet is, right? I think he has enough inspiration from what we saw from Elon Musk, for example, what Elon Musk did to X, dismantling the entire corporate structure, firing all the sludge people, firing all the DEI people, firing all the marketing people, and yet Twitter's never been better, right? Because what you're left are the real engineers, the people who really want to work and contribute, and Elon knew that and was successful. So the idea that you can model this reduction of a federal government is amazing, right? So now Vivek looks like he got activated on all kinds of issues. So he's giving his plan yesterday, but here he is actually even talking about the election part, right? And how dangerous it is to not have one election day, to not have a credible election. So you've got him activated on that file now, right? Then he goes into the fentanyl file yesterday, going into how we've understood for a long time, that and here's the simulation winking at us. Do you know where the precursors to fentanyl come from? I didn't even know this. I just learned this yesterday from Vivek. They come from Wuhan. So they come from Wuhan, and then apparently there's a bunch of Chinese there's a bunch of Chinese scientists, chemists down in Mexico cooking all this shit up, sending it into America, right? And he's calling it a straight up opium war, right? A straight up opium war. But also singling out the federal government for doing nothing. We know where they are, right? We know where they are. Why hasn't a U.S. drone gone into China and killed these people? We need to ask China permission to kill people who are killing Americans at this rate? Is that really the case? right? Really? If American federal government was really on our side, would they wait this long to send one drone in and just make China deal with the fucking problem, right? After we kill them, right? But they're not in that game. They've been complicit in the same way they were complicit with the Italian mafia in 48. It looks like they're complicit with the cartels in Mexico. It looks like they've given the cartels free reign. For what reason? There could be many, and many you might even agree with, right? Maybe the free reign comes because they're allowed to, they don't harass American companies there. We don't know what the reasons are, right? We don't know. But it looks like it's been going on since at least the 90s. I never believed in the 90s when I first heard that the CIA was managing the crack cocaine outbreak of the inner city black communities in America. But now it looks pretty obvious that that's what happened. I didn't believe that for years. Now I would never be able to deny it, right? Now it looks like that's what you got, right? So you get Vivek even just, saying all this stuff is going on, and Biden won't even go out in public and debate. So he's calling him that on that. He says, I'm calling on Biden to come out and debate. The election is supposed to be about offering competing visions for the country and letting the people decide, not using police power to prosecute your opponents and removing them from the ballot. Let's make our founders proud, right? So in so many ways, you're going to see Vivek, I think, continue to make a case here, because indeed, this idea of federalism and how it functions and what we get out of it and what inconveniences it brings into our lives is starting to become more and more obvious. It's becoming more obvious to Americans. And go back to Canada for a second. Remember I said the only difference in federalism in Canada and the United States is the banking, right? Well, yesterday, this thing went viral where someone tried to take out some money from Interact. That was you guys probably all saw this. Someone tried to buy a car in Canada. They went to the bank and they wouldn't give them $3,000 cash out of their own account to buy the car. What do you need it for? What's going on? How come you need this much cash? Blah, 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 blah. So the only reason that can even happen is because banking is a federal jurisdiction, and they have, there's only 7 of them. They can all call up the prime minister without any hesitation. They all live in my village, by the way. All the people who run these banks, they all live in my village. You see them out all the time, right? It's nothing for them to get together and talk about collusion-y stuff between the banks. It's really that simple. So Ben Rickert saying, this will become more commonplace soon. You will need to prove your worthiness in order to access your own digital fiat IOUs. The banks keep very small amounts of reserves, if any. You loan them your currency when you make a deposit. You are the unsecured creditor. Most banks today are insolvent, right? Again, the federal government in Canada created this unbelievable danger to Canadians and their wealth and all of this stuff, right? And now they're going to have to deal with it. Now they're going to have to live with this. Now they're going to have to live with the consequences of Canadians understanding where the threat really comes from. And more people are going to understand that the government is the same one making the banks capable of keeping your money from you. That's going to hit Canadians in an intimate way, right? That's going to change even more the mindset in Canada. Now, we don't need Canadians to wake up or anything. Like that movie Civil War had it totally wrong. I abandoned Canada the minute it became inconvenient for me, because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to sit and waste my fucking time arguing with NPC sludge people in Canada. They're too stupid, and it doesn't matter. The only fight that matters politically is in the United States, and if we lose that, we'll be fine anyway, right? It'll just be proof that the nation state system with its democratic features is garbage and we don't need to bother, right? Then you start perceiving that other systems, like whatever's going on in El Salvador and all that, is really where the future is headed. So this idea that Canadians would survive like in the Civil War movie, I think is stupid, right? That there's no reason for Canada to even exist in the first place. So imagine when exactly what they said in 95 in that referendum, do you want to renegotiate your place in Canada? One of the main fear factors that was used to manipulate French Canadians by the English side was money, right? It's why I said the other day that when the Quebec Premier at the time, Jacques Parizeau, said money is what caused us the failure to have our own renegotiation of federalism, it was money. Remember, I described these signs. It was something my dad really opened my eyes to at the time, because my dad was not really on the Canadian side in the 95 election. He wasn't anti-Canada at the time, but he's like, I'm going for Quebec. I don't mind it. Whatever they do, I'm fine. He would all, because all the English people at the time in 95 would say, I'm moving. When I was in high school, everyone, the day of the referendum, I'm moving. We're moving tomorrow if the separatists win. We're moving, right? Parents told me. My dad was like, we're not going anywhere. Like, we're not, where are we going to move? Ontario, unterrible, shithole, no mountains, garbage. Never, right? He was not going anywhere. And so one of the things that he stuck on, one of the things that drove him to the more Quebec affiliate side was the money question, because what happened was the French Canadians, it was we, O-U-I is how you spell yes in French. All of their posters, that was their side, yes to renegotiating the Canadian Constitution, had the O in the O-U-I, we, which means yes. The O was always some different image. It was a daisy for peace. It was a peace sign. They had a whole bunch of them. But one of them was that loonie that I mentioned before that CBC News made fun of, right? The loonie is the $1 coin because there's a Canadian loon on it. It's a gold coin, gold, shit, brass or something. And there's a loon on it. So we call it the loonie. And they made the loonie the O. And the point was the Quebecers saying, we're going to use the Canadian dollar. Don't worry about it. Like, we can use it too, right? And Canada would say, no, you can't use it. We're going to stop you. Right? And my dad said, well, wait a minute here. What's the plan? Are they going to send people in to take people's money from their pockets, from their wallets? Why, if a Quebecer can use an American dollar, why can't they use a Canadian dollar? How are you going to keep them from using the money? And that really made me think, because that automatically implies violence, right? It implies that Canada would have to go and take people's money out of their wallets or their bank accounts or whatever. And that they were even willing to do that they were even willing to say, you can't use our money, was getting into a point of violence that most Canadians were not comfortable with and that most people didn't want to talk about. But it stayed with me. That idea stayed with me ever, until I got into Bitcoin, where then I finally understood what they were talking about. And that's one of the things that's pushed me to being more of a sovereignist, more of being interested in Quebec renegotiating with Canada. And indeed, if they do it this time around, I think they'll be successful because the money isn't strong enough to keep them there now. Quebec has options. If Quebec groks Bitcoin, Canada's done. It's not going to make it. Literally done. Quebec is one of the richest places in the world. And the only reason why they're a bit stupid is because the federal government has given them Canadian dollar pablum for years, which is why they can pay for this big white collar bureaucratic state, right? It's from manipulation. They steal the money from Canada because Canada had to pay them off to stay in the country already. They had to pay them off. Quebec is paid off, right? How long can they pay Quebec off? Quebec doesn't need stupid Canada for anything, nothing. So what I can see happening is everything that Vivek is talking about here in the United States will end up reducing the size of the federal government. It will end up reinvigorating states' rights, states' power, state sovereignty. And whatever New Deal America comes up with between the federal government and the states, I think if you go back to the original Federalist Papers, if you go back to the origins of where United States started, there was an opt-in for Quebec and the Canadian provinces to join, right? In the original idea, there was an opt-in for them. Now, it didn't work out that way. It wasn't really a big prize. America wasn't trying to move north, right? That was sort of a last resort. The idea was to get across the country where all the land was much better, not to go north where it's garbage shit, Canadian shield, useless. So, and they didn't know about oil yet, but, there you go. So, no chance Quebec political class goes BTC. Not the one you see today, P-Man. Not the one you see today. Not the one that's fueled by these white-collar folks. When you start seeing the more populist, right? Because here's the thing that people don't understand about Quebec. You do have the white-collar bureaucrats, fiat sludge, too much education, too many degrees. Quebec education is very cheap and good. Right, the quality of education that I got in Quebec in the 90s and 2000s was actually amazing. Right, Quebec actually is one of the places that make you believe that it's possible to create a program or something that can actually work for people. Right. So now they fail all the time too. So I don't want to make it sound like everything they do is correct, right, or high quality. But the bureaucrats in Quebec are at least useful. Like, they know what they're doing. Right. If I ask for like a document in Quebec, I can get it. Right. The people are competent. There's not a competency vacuum. And even, when I go to English Canada or I go to the United States now, just going to like McDonald's or something, nobody speaks English. No one knows what they're doing. No one's paying attention. No one even cares, right? But in Quebec, because they don't really have a lot of immigration, and even in the small towns, it's just local kids still working in the McDonald's. And you can actually get a decent burger from A&W in particular. And it looks like these places are clean, well run, right? Like you were used to your whole life, the same way you were used to. So don't diminish the importance of that stuff, right? Quebec still has pride in keeping things clean, keeping things neat, keeping things tidy, and all these Beaucerons, we call them, the people from the Beauce. Quebec still has a huge entrepreneurial spirit that will never go away. I mean, how many people start up businesses? You know how easy it is in Quebec to get like farm to table food, because we still have some farmers who are entrepreneurial, some farmers who are trying to make a bespoke, unique product. All the gourmet cheeses in Canada come from Quebec, my area, in fact. So there's, we got all kinds of little farmers markets and little boutique type things. So I'm not saying the current class will, right? But once Quebecers understand that the Canadian money can't keep them in tow, that it's not a reason why they would stay with Canada. Once Canada can't afford to buy Quebec off anymore, Quebec is going to have to perceive new things. And there is enough entrepreneurial people there to realize, in the same way that South America is a basket case when it comes to money, Quebec will have the same option. They'll say, do we be a basket case, or do we absorb this off-the-shelf canned money that is Bitcoin? Right? I think you're going to see the off-the-shelf canned money, especially if the Quebec energy people, who are really the most powerful people in Quebec, we can forget everything you want about politicians. But before Quebec started, right? Before Quebec started, this is why you can't name a premier in Quebec before Duplessis in the 30s to 50s. Before that, the clergy, the church ran everything, right? They were the chargers of Quebec. Then it went to the politicians. Now, secretly, without even people realizing it, the true power in Quebec still lies with Hydro-Quebec and its ability to dictate national policies for Quebec. Quebec, for example, the mining that started in Quebec in the first place was because Hydro-Quebec said, we're going to take some deals. Now, it's Quebec it's the Hydro-Quebec that shut it down, right? Hydro-Quebec said, it's too much. We're going to shut it down. We had too much interest. Now, if they change their mind about that, and I think they will, you could, in the same way, turn on a dime, right? Quebec is still a top-down country. That's never changing. Quebec is always going to be top-down. I don't think there's any, there will never be sort of a pure populist bottom-up thing in Quebec. Quebec is hardwired in the Catholic mindset. I don't think it's going to change. That's fine. It works for them, and I think they're going to be okay. They don't have to be bottom-up about everything, right? They still believe if we have competent people who make decisions, things are going to work out. And for a little while, I think they might, right? But again, if you go back to where the dangers are coming from and how we perceive these dangers, again, a Quebecer having their money shut off by the federal banks is going to create a psychological schism that wasn't around in 95. It wasn't there. Remember, the money was used to threaten and keep Canada in. It's going to be flipped. Right now, they're going to be like, well, they're the ones keeping me from taking money out. And so that's a totally different circumstance, right? That actually puts the perception of where the danger comes from more accurately, right? And go to the case of the bridge, right? That case of the bridge, the bridge is being shut down yesterday. The Brooklyn Bridge was shut down. The Golden Gate Bridge was shut down yesterday. Again, this is one of those cases where, in the same way that keeping people from accessing their money will make people fed up and not want to bother with the system, and you're taking away one element, right? Having the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and the Brooklyn Bridge in New York being shut down, that only affects libtards. It only affects NPC sludge people. How many Bitcoiners do you think were in that fucking bridge yesterday? Either of them. I mean, 0.01%. Because what Bitcoiner is hanging out in these shitholes anymore? None. There's none. All right. It's the same with abortion, right? Now, abortion is as dark as you can imagine. I agree with all that, right? I agree with that. But I don't care if NPC sludge people do it. It's not Bitcoiners getting aborted, right? It's not Bitcoiners like, oh, I can't afford a kid, or I want to party and the kid's in the way. That's not what's happening, right? It's not conservatives with the abortion thing. That's not happening. They're not aborting their kids, right? It's just the sludge people. If they want to do this stuff, go. If you want to shut down a liberal bridge in a liberal city and piss off your own liberal people, you can shit in your front yard all you fucking want, and I don't care. Shit in your front yard all day. Fill your front yard with your own shit. and that's your fucking business. I'm not going to stop you. I don't care if your front yard doesn't have shit in it. Go shit in your front yard all day, right? And so when they do this, in the end, all they're doing is pissing off more of their libtard friends, more of their libtard cohort. And if these shit lib NPC retards in Brooklyn, in New York City, in San Francisco have to wait in extra traffic for things they asked for, I think it's great. I think it's just perfect. We need to embrace bridge closings in liberal cities constantly, right? Close another bridge. Anytime they want to complain about something, say, close the bridge. Go protest. Shut the bridge down. Go do it. Make sure people can't leave. Because frankly, if we were in a fake civil war like that movie he tried to show, there obviously wouldn't be a civil war. All that would be required is like 10 people from a rural area. It would take about 10 people to shut down every bridge in New York City and let them starve, right? Let them shut the bridges down. It would be that easy. I mean, 2 cars smash into each other in the Holland Tunnel, that's shut down. Once you shut one down, everything else will get gummed up. If you did it on the George Washington, Lincoln, and Holland Tunnel, 3 tunnels, 6 cars, smash them into each other in the middle, get out of the car and walk out of the fucking tunnel. Don't even let anyone, just pretend you walked away from the accident. They'll never be able to move those cars. It'll take them all day, easily all day, right? And then what? Right? Do it again, right? Now, I'm not promoting violence or terrorism. I'm just saying what's likely to happen, right? There wouldn't be a civil war in the United States between the federal government, between the rural areas and the cities. It's not possible. There would be no fight, right? It would be midgets against heavyweight boxing champions. There's no way, right? There's just no way. So like Batman. Yeah, it's like Batman. Yes. Yeah. So this idea that people are going to understand where danger is coming from, where the risk is coming from, and they're going to be able to perceive that it comes from federal meddling, federal brainwashing, the federal government itself, and eventually they're going to be able to tie that the federal government's true power, money. Quebec is going to understand it very quickly, right? Very quickly. Quebec and Texas are almost the same place. They're almost the same place in the sense that they are both super rich. They can afford to be dumb because their energy capacity is so high. So they have a reputation of both being kind of stupid, right? Quebecers do have, like, they're dumb, right? You can meet a lot of like hokey, amazing, right, but clueless, insular people in Quebec, the same as Texas. Now, the reason it's like that, which I love it, right? It's because they don't even have to care about the rest of the world. It's just not important. It's not relevant. Their place has tons of energy. No matter what happens, they're going to be fine. It's all just sport, right? Federal politics, mostly sport to places like Texas and Quebec. Not true for the rest of Canada. The Maritimes need it. Alberta getting screwed, so it's not sport, it's abuse, right? But they didn't win those fights in the 70s and 80s like Quebec did to get all of this benefit, right? So, but once the benefit runs out, once they can't be paid off anymore, and once the United States situation recalibrates, I think you are going to have a way to open up all of North America to a type of United States of North America, very plural, not a cohesive entity that all bands together to make a more powerful federal government. No, a deal that allows all of these places to grow in their own terms with very loose security agreements between them, very loose trade agreements between them, and nevertheless some mutuality in how they exist together. I think free flow of people. I don't think passports make it through North America. Whoa, that bird almost hit me. Did you guys see that? That guy came right in front of my eyes. It was crazy. All right, I got a lot of comments here. Let me read them, and then I got to go do some stuff. Nolan with the real talk on Canada. It's the real talk on federalism in general and the opportunity that when oil is only sold in BTC, watch them panic. Yeah, that's what it's coming to. What we Bitcoiners are going through, us cannabis community went through the last 30 years. Now look at cannabis, legal and universally socially accepted, almost 95%. Yeah. Banks are policemen now. They sure are. Yeah. And that's where's that happening? That isn't that in that's another one of these. So again, go back to this federal where our perception of where risk and danger is coming from. there's something that I think even libtards are freaking out about today, that there's some power being enacted that will allow or will force any company in America to spy on American citizens, including banks. I think something about this FISA is related to the power of anyone to be compelled to spy, the deputization of not just the banks, but all companies in America. So I don't really understand it. I saw some libtards going on about it this morning. I don't really get it yet. But there you go. Yeah, the federal Janet Yellen afuera. For Jesus to save you, you must become a revolutionary like Jesus, chase the money changers and cleanse the temples. Yeah, that's what I like. What I always explain to people when especially Christians, is exactly that. They're like, why only Christians, only Christianity, not Bitcoin. Don't make a religion out of Bitcoin. I don't think I make a religion out of it, but it is worldview forming, as Christianity is worldview forming, right? But what I always tell them is, what did Jesus die for? Do you remember? Do you remember what he died for? He died because the heart of the temple had become corrupted by money. Money corrupted the heart of the society and the religion and the government, and he protested that, and that's what led to his death. So it's directly linked to Bitcoin. So whenever Christians bring that up, I'm always like, well, do you know what he died for? Do you remember what he died for? Exactly what we're up to. Right, exactly what we're up to. So there you go. All right, more down here. Yeah. So again, P-Man, we don't need the political class. What we need is Hydro-Quebec. We don't care about the political class. They're stupid. You need the public utility to tell them, and when they do tell them, things will definitely change in Canada. Chick-fil-A in North Carolina runs with high schoolers and young people. Good to hear, Chiron. Good to hear. Yeah, you don't always get that, right? You don't always get that. Got learned on real Canadian history, and brain is packed with factoids and healthy understanding. Good, Veterans Cannabis. Good. A business check takes 5 days to clear from my business. What a joke. Yeah. No, Canada is a very dumb place. Had the Holland Tunnel thing happen to me. Yeah, it takes forever. Yeah, it takes forever. It's really the worst. Right? Oh, did he? Obama called Christians Easter worshippers. Yes, Jose has it right. Yes, I think they all join. I think all of South America. I think America becomes really what it always should have been, the United States of the Americas. And indeed, El Salvador, Argentina, it's not giving up sovereignty at all, right? There'll be fewer things to manage. But, even in the earliest days of Bitcoin, when I was very optimistic, and still am, but I remember telling people in 2013, 2014, when my brain was picturing and populating a vision of the future that Bitcoin could bring. One way to explain it to people that I always said, because I like to make it visual, not argumentative, but visual, right? They would say, well, what does Bitcoin mean, right? What's going to change? And I said, I would always go like this. I'd say, well, I think what it means is you can take a camper van from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego with your family, and it will be safe. That's what it will bring, right? You can't do that today. You can't drive, but that's something I'd like to do, right? I would like to drive from wherever in North America all the way down to Argentina. Why can't I do that? It's too dangerous. Well, there's a small little piece in Colombia and Panama that there's no way to traverse in a car, but we'll fix that. That I'm not worried about that, right? So you can start picturing that. And when I would say that to people already in 2013, 2014, they'd go, that would be amazing. That would be the best. Because what it implies is everything's working out, right? What it implies is there's no more gangs. There's no more border trouble. There's no more, blocking at the border. There's no more process. There's none of that, right? Right now, if I wanted to do that trip, I'd have to drive to Mexico, buy a gun right away. That's a risk, right? I can't buy it right across the border because that's the dangerous part of Mexico. So I'd have to try to hope I make it to, the Pacific coast or something, buy a gun there, and then I could probably go on the venture and figure it out. But I couldn't do that with my kids. Maybe I could do it alone, right? For an adventure. But you can't do that at scale, right? But I believe one day you'll be able to. Soon, when Argentina and El Salvador join. Right? Canadian identities are a source of false, stupid pride. Oh my God, Darsab. Their ignorance about Canada that's what makes them the dumbest people. Their ignorance about the United States, that's what makes them the dumbest people. That their whole identity is that they're better than Americans makes them the most retarded people in the world. I mean, like it's just a waste, right? At least Americans are dumb. That's something. Dumb and deluded is totally different, right? Just dumb is fine. We can deal with that. But you think you're smart because you're not. Your whole identity is you're not as dumb as them. It makes you dumber, right? It makes you dumber. Great show. Always interesting hearing about Canada. Well, maybe. I pay my rent at local TD Bank to my landlord and have to show ID when using cash because they told me they need to watch out for money laundering. Yeah, I can't even use. I'm banned from banks in Canada. I can't make a transaction. I haven't made a transaction from a Canadian bank in years. They don't let me. Which ended up being a good thing. Safe travel. Enjoyed the meetup today. Great, Joseph. When depositing cash. I love Alex Garland stuff. Dying to watch Civil War. Might even go today. But now not too excited. Well, look, I think he did well I only read the critical drink. I watched Critical Drinker's review. He said beautifully shot. If you're into the shots, the war stuff, amazing. It's just they didn't want to get political to put any character behind the story. You never know why there was a civil war. You never know the context. They were too worried about backlash and taking sides that they made it so vanilla that there's a problem. But Critical Drinker was very quick to mention you see the hand of a super skilled artistic filmmaker with absolutely stunning and beautiful shots. Now, the only real fundamental complaint is that the protagonists are legacy media journalists, which is probably the most retarded idea you can come up with, right? Like they're already not participating in real fights now and are just brainwashers. So how in the shit do they wake up and run, an important mission? It's just not possible. Had they made it with like bloggers or something, it might have been more interesting. But there you go. Jesus saves, yet Bitcoin gives you the arc. Yeah, indeed. Jesus approves the anointing oil of the herbs was cannabis. I'm sorry, P-Man. TDS is real, and I feel for them. Hard to say strong and have clarity with this forced mental illness. Yeah. George Gammon road trip. I sure did. Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, look, George, again, what you need to understand about George, similar to Peter Schiff, right? These are characters. Don't take everything they say literally, because nothing they say is exactly true, right? They're playing. Think of it as wrestling, right? You have to understand that Peter Schiff is a heel from the WWF or the WWE. They don't really mean what he says. If he came out 5 years ago and said, I love Bitcoin, it's like gold, he would have just been drowned in a sea of other people saying the same thing as him, and he would have got nothing out of it, right? Instead, he creates this character that hates it. But all you need to know about Peter Schiff is you can buy his product with Bitcoin, right? So look at what they do. The kid, remember Spencer, was into Bitcoin fighting with his dad. That's a wrestling storyline. It's not real, right? George Gammon. Now, there's some reality behind it. He might still prefer gold, but the motherfucker's been stacking sats, guys. I hate to break it to you, right? But look at what he gets every time he triggers Bitcoiners. Every time he says, it's dumb, look at Bitcoin, gold is so much better. He gets a mountain of attention. He gets energy, and he gets stronger and richer every time, right? So I'm a Peter Schiff fan through and through, right? This is a top quality psychological manipulator of the highest order, right? And very intelligent. And you got to love Peter Schiff too, because he's one of the first people that ever came around, and he was the first to defend the January 6th scam, right? So yeah, he's a character. It's a character. None of it's it's great. It's entertaining. Just never get triggered by George. If George Gammon does a trip down south and his big conclusion is people don't need Bitcoin, guess what he's doing? He's doing a Peter Schiff heel turn. Now, he might even believe it, right? You got to understand that the heels, when they get into character, right? They might even believe this stuff, but it's not real. It's not even close. It's not even close to real, right? It's just entertainment. It's just fun, right? I agree with your analysis. Now, I could be wrong. You've always got to remind yourself you might be wrong, but I don't think I am, right? False opposition. Yeah. I've had many conversations with Peter Schiff over the years, booking him for shows. And I even basically stopped because I knew what I would be getting, which is the show. And people have seen the show. So I'm like, I don't want to put a rerun on my show, right? So it's just reruns. I don't need a Peter Schiff rerun. It's not original enough, but it's still high quality trolling. It's very good, right? Let go of anger, let go of pride. When you are bound by nothing, you go beyond sorrow. Anger is like a chariot careening wildly. He who curbs his anger is the true charioteer. Others merely hold the reins. Indeed. Yeah. So just enjoy the Peter Schiff show. It's entertaining. And look at what he does every time. How many people have hit home runs off of his lollipop pitches, right? He's just sitting there giving you batting practice. And all these guys, like Walker, who's great, like Walker gets to go up, knock him out of the park, right? And everyone goes, great, yay. And so he's fine, right? He's okay with getting choke slammed onto the mat by a Bitcoiner, and the whole crowd goes wild and they get their vengeance, and he just rinses and repeats, right? His thing is to get choke slammed by a Bitcoiner in front of the whole world and get up and do it again the next day. And it helps the Bitcoiner, it helps him, everybody's happy, right? Everybody's happy. WWE is the realest sport going, guys. Believe it or not. All right. I've gone on a bit long. Let me see what folks are saying on Rumble. Lots of comments. He knows what he's doing in his own doing for what I troll Peter a lot. Yeah, there you go. You aren't streaming on the Bitcoin Mag channel. Yeah, I know. Meiji1007. I've stopped streaming on the Bitcoin Magazine channel. Why are so many viewers hitting the like? So few viewers hitting like. Yeah. Please, folks here watching every day, hit the like button. I spent a couple of weeks in Montreal in the 1990s. Loved it. They hosted an international fireworks festival. They still do that in Narwhal. Yeah, I'll be able to see it from my place today. Which we love. All right, everyone. All right. Peace out, folks. Hope you have a great day. And I will see you later.